What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about probably one of the most discussed movies of the year. I feel like when this movie was announced and the production was going on, there were a ton of discussions about how was this movie going to turn out. And the movie I'm going to be discussing today is Megalopolis, the newest film from Francis Ford Coppola. And obviously, Francis Ford Coppola, very well-renowned director who has made a ton of incredible works in his career. But towards the tail end of his career, his work became a little bit dicey. It's been quite a while since a movie from him had been released. And the big thing surrounding this movie initially was that he used a bunch of his own money to make this movie. It took a really long time. And then post the movie's initial screenings at film festivals, a bunch of stuff came out about his behavior on set, being a really creepy, touchy old man. And so there's a lot of weird stuff surrounding this movie. It's been a very interesting discussion to listen to online. I feel like a majority of the reviews for this movie are very, very negative. There are some people who have given it positive reviews and who have talked about that this is like a misunderstood masterpiece. And it's always interesting for me, as someone who reviews a movie a day, essentially, to go in and watch something like this and just be like, okay, wipe away everything that you know and just try to engage with it as neutrally as possible and take it in. And so I'm going to discuss Megalopolis with you today. Megalopolis is directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Genius artist Cesar Catilina seeks to leap the city of New Rome into a utopian, idealistic future, while his opposition, Mayor Franklyn Cicero, remains committed to a regressive status quo, perpetuating greed, special interests, and partisan warfare. Torn between them is socialite Julia Cicero, the mayor's daughter, whose love for Caesar has divided her loyalties, forcing her to discover what she truly believes humanity deserves. So, as I said, a lot going on around this movie. There's a ton of discussion. There are a bunch of opinions that exist out there. And my opinion is this is a steaming pile of garbage. This movie is absolutely horrendous. There are no redeemable qualities to this whatsoever. This is the ramblings of an old man who should have gave up filmmaking a long time ago. That's truly what I believe this movie is. It's nothing more than 2+ hours of an old man trying to spew his ideological views through this random set of scenes where there's very little cohesion or understanding to the story. He was clearly drugged out of his mind while he made this, and not even in like a so bad it's good way. It's just truly a mess in every sense of the word. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit with you today. So normally, if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, this would be the part of the review where I start giving you backstories on characters and where I start telling you a little bit about the movie so that you can get enough information to discern whether or not you want to watch it. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not worth my time or your time for me to discuss that whatsoever. This movie's plot is the most convoluted mess I've ever seen in my life. They try to establish this world where it's like this new interpretation of something that already exists. And Francis Ford Coppola thinks he's being incredibly intelligent and that there's a ton of symbolism and nuance. And it's not. It is overtly idiotic. And it just really infuriated me, honestly. I cannot believe I wasted 2.5 hours of my life watching this movie, because at the end of the day, what is it for? I mean, what does this movie exist for? That I can't by any means understand, other than this old man was like, this could be my last chance to just spew my ideas about humanity into the world. But like, does anyone really care? Especially like the behavior that was conducted on this set, and then the way it's reflected in some of the characters in this, like his worldview, it just feels kind of gross, which makes it even a worse experience to get through. But I will talk a little bit about the things that I didn't enjoy with this movie. For starters, this simultaneously feels like the most expensive and the cheapest movie ever made at the same time. And it's really difficult to kind of completely tell you why without you seeing moments of the movie. There are CGI moments in this movie that look as bad as like a Neil Breen movie, which if you're not familiar with Neil Breen, please educate yourself. But that's what I felt like watching this. Like I felt like it was a Neil Breen movie, or like Tommy Wiseau was given a multi-million-dollar budget. And it feels the same way because Neil Breen is very similar. He makes these movies where he thinks that he's creating these really poignant and thoughtful political statements, and they just come across across as the most laughably hilarious garbage imaginable. But those movies are so bad they are entertaining because of how ridiculously absurd they are. This just feels like incompetence in the worst way possible. There are so many scenes in this where you can just tell Francis Ford Coppola thought he was creating the most visually stunning thing that you'd ever seen in your life. And it's laughable, honestly. There were a couple of moments that I thought looked genuinely great, and that there was time and effort and energy from the cinematographer and the people working on post-production and the people working on visual effects. But it's so inconsistent that it just pulls you in, pulls you out, pulls you in over and over and over again, where it's impossible for it to work for the entire 2-hour runtime. The performances in this are horrible. Everyone involved, even actors that I love. I thought Adam Driver's performance in this was ridiculously bad, almost to the point where I was like, does he know how bad this is? Like, is he reciting these lines and is he understanding how bad it is? Like, there's this scene, it's circulating everywhere on the internet right now, and I genuinely had to pause the movie because of how hard I was laughing, where he's talking to the young daughter that was referenced in the plot description, and he's talking about just how thoughtful and intelligent that he is and all of his plans for the world. And he says, like, but you can go back to the club. And it's like the worst dialogue you can ever imagine. It feels like it was written by an 80-year-old man who's trying to stay culturally relevant. And it's not. He's so out of touch, it doesn't work. And there are a ton of moments like that. Aubrey Plaza's character, I give it to Aubrey. She's one of my favorite actresses and I love her. But like, what is her character in this movie? Like, genuinely, what is her character supposed to be? Like, so many scenes with her, I was just scratching my head. Like, what is this trying to say? Like, really, about these characters? Because for starters, the characters are not interesting. There is not a single character in this movie that has any sort of interesting personality trait. Adam Driver's character is the most self-involved, just like ridiculous human being imaginable, who it's just like, my vision for the world is better than everyone else's. But he's so narcissistic, it's like none of it feels authentic. So it's like you're watching it and you're just like, okay, why would I care for this person? And I guess then you get to the point where you're like, well, maybe I should care about the conflict. And they establish the relationships between these characters early on through expositional dialogue, sort of. But just when you get to the point in the movie where you feel like you're kind of getting an understanding as to the relationship between these characters and how things operate, he throws something new in that is so confusing and just ridiculous that you're like, okay, everything I thought I know could be thrown out the window, and we're just back to more of the same shit. And that's what was irritating about this movie, is like, you would get to a point where you're like, I sort of understand what he's going for, and then that would just be thrown right out the window, and then he can stop time, and there's all these just crazy things that he introduced. And I truly think that, like, Coppola had an idea here, and that the more drugs that he took and the more he tried to establish it, the more off the rails it went. And I think what is really frustrating is, like, I've seen some people really try hard to be like, oh, this is such a misunderstood masterpiece, but how? Like, realistically, how? Because this isn't avant-garde surrealism. This isn't something like a David Lynch movie where you watch Eraserhead and you get a narrative structure and there's not a lot of dialogue, but there's so much symbolism and there's so many incredible ideas being introduced to you. And through the symbolism and the editing and everything about that movie that makes it special is what resonates with viewers. And even if you go away at the end of the movie saying, I think that that's what it means, but I'm not sure, what makes that movie so special, and what makes a lot of Lynch's work and other surrealist directors so special, is that they can leave you thinking about something where you're trying to piece something together in your head and say, okay, this theme resonated with me, or this. This movie is just a ton of convoluted ideas about this old man's worldview spouted out at you, to where none of them will sit with you after this 2.5-hour movie. You're just going to think about what a complete and utter disaster it was sitting through it. And that's what I thought the entire time I was watching it. Just what was going on in this man's head that caused him to say, yeah, this is really what I need to do right now. And it's just a mess. Honestly, it was a complete and utter waste of my time. This is easily one of the worst movies I've seen all year long, and I will never watch this movie again. No one could ever try to convince me that this is some kind of misunderstood masterpiece or that it's some sort of work of genius. I will never waste 2.5 hours of my life watching this trash again. So have you seen Megalopolis? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was abysmal. I hated every second of it, and I don't even want to think about it ever again. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material. and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.